Week number 4 is now in the books. We are now a month into the season. It's officially October. We get to start kind of understanding what these teams actually are, what our fantasy players are actually looking like. It's no longer, overreaction season, not knowing what happened to some of these guys. But a lot to talk about. A lot of injuries this week, unfortunately. A lot of fantasy production. I'm sure myself and Danny are in good moods because we have the Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen stacks in our home league. So that was definitely a great sight for sore eyes for my 1 and 2 home league team. Definitely got a much needed W this week. So we're going to start it off as we always do with some injury talk, with some fantasy L's. I mean, one of my L's and also one of the bigger injuries was Javonte Williams. He was my start of the week at running back, and definitely not a great game out of him. He leaves the game with a hip flexor injury. He has Jaleel McLaughlin come in, who I'm sure we'll probably touch on in the waiver section as well. He was one of the only major injuries, I would say, but there was a couple here. So you guys can see here, T. Higgins rib fracture. The diagnosis there from Dr. Jeff here says about 2 to 4 weeks. He expects him to be out. We did see a left middle finger injury for Justin Herbert. Apparently he can play through it, but he might have some ball security issues. We've seen, the way that I think he had an elbow injury last year, how that kind of affected how he was throwing the ball
ribs
as well.
Ribs. I think it was the ribs.
Sorry, yeah. And then Kenny Pickett also suffered a left knee. I thought he tore his ACL on that play. I thought that was going to be worse than it is. It sounds like he's not going to be out for the season, but he'll probably be out for a couple games. His teammate Pat Freiermuth also suffered a hamstring strain as well. It sounded a little bit more severe than the Mike Evans one, which isn't actually listed here. He has a hamstring injury as well, but it sounds like he'll probably be fine either next week or the week after. Probably won't be too long. And then, as I mentioned, Javonte Williams with the hip flexor injury there. And then Adams suffered an injury, came back. Jahan Dotson suffered an injury, came back during the game as well. Matt Stafford, I believe, suffered an injury and also came back, or I don't even know if he was even out. Donald Parham suffered a wrist injury. Doesn't really matter for us, but Gerald Everett might hear his name called on the waiver section as a result because of that injury. So, I mean, any of those stand out to you? Any that you think are going to be significant or that we need to talk about any further?
Well, I mean, I'll get into one of my takeaways in a little bit, but I am worried about that T. Higgins rib fracture. Like, what is the state of this Bengals offense going to look like with T. Higgins off the field? And that's one of the takeaways. I'll indulge on it fully once we get there, but I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous, and not great that we actually have a lot of commitment to the Bengals on our $2,000 main event team. Because I mean, outside of the Bengals commitment, we basically hit the nuts everywhere else.
Yeah, I know. With and even Jalen Waddle too. Like, our first 5 picks in that league were Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, and Kyle Pitts. Like, our team has been pretty much horrible for the first 5 rounds, but we have Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, DeAndre Swift, some of these other later round receivers
coming back.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor's on our team. He's going to be coming back at some point. So really wild that team has just been so bad through the first couple rounds of that draft. And we're still, treading water at 1 and 3. I mean, we're not really treading water. We're kind of down bad. We got smoked by a haymaker Christian McCaffrey performance this week, which definitely isn't ideal. We can go right into the takeaways. I mean, we're already talking about the Bengals. Let's start with the Bengals situation because also another L on my part was they were my lock of the week to cover 2.5 points against the Tennessee Titans. They only scored 3 points, which is pretty much what their spread was. So them getting absolutely annihilated by the Tennessee Titans was not on my bingo card. I didn't think that was going to happen. Joe Burrow appeared to be the healthiest he was going into a game all season. And they, outside of that first drive, when they kicked the field goal from the 2-yard line or whatever it was, they appeared to do nothing on offense for the rest of the entire game. And their defense was kind of terrible as well. They couldn't get off the field.
Yeah, no, watching that game, I mean, it was just clear Joe Burrow is just not there right now. I don't know why he's playing if he's giving you legitimately some of the worst quarterback play in the league right now. Straight up. Why are you having him on the field if he's going to be playing like that? He has no mobility. He doesn't trust his fucking calf. The deep attempts are completely what makes the Cincinnati offense special, what makes it click is those deep shots down the field. Jamar Chase just winning a fucking one-on-one. T. Higgins coming down with a 50-50. Joe Burrow trusting his playmakers 20, 30 yards down the field. This offense right now is a fucking gimmick, and Joe Burrow is just not comfortable. So realistically, I don't see an easy solution for this team. If Joe Burrow is going to continue to be inhibited by that calf, they are probably not going to be making the playoffs.
Yeah, dude, he's playing like a bottom 5 NFL quarterback right now. Like if you look at like EPA per play, he's down there with like Zach Wilson and Desmond Ritter and like some of the absolute basement performances that we've seen so far this season. So yeah, it's not ideal. And I don't know why more NFL teams don't do this, but I think it's so much more important nowadays to have a backup quarterback. If you're a Super Bowl contender like the Bengals were coming into the year, or like the Chiefs, or like the Bills, or like some of these teams, you know you're a Super Bowl contender. You know that your goal is, winning in January and February, not really winning in the regular season, although you do want to get like home field advantage and a high seed and that kind of thing. Why not protect yourself with Jacoby Brissett in free agency, or like some really capable backup quarterback that, even if your quarterback can play, which Joe Burrow apparently can right now, he's playing through this injury. If they had Jacoby Brissett on their roster, Joe Burrow is probably not even starting the season. They probably would have put him on PUP to start the season, just so that they could get him 100% healthy, so he would be ready to go for the stretch playoff run, because Jacoby Brissett with this Bengals supporting cast would probably be 3-1 right now. At least if he played like how he played last year for the Browns.
Yeah, realistically, average quarterback play, given how good the defense has been for the most part. Like, yeah, they gave up 27 points this week, but like you could make the argument that in that Rams game that they won, they only really won it because of the defense anyways. Like the defense stepped up to the plate. That's why they won the game. Like this Bengals offense has legitimately been a bottom 3 unit in the league so far.
Yeah, it's been absolutely brutal. Hopefully they can figure things out, but like, yeah, go ahead.
Real quickly, actually, bottom 3 may even be pushing it. So this is a fun stat, right? Going into the weekend. So the Bengals in 4 games so far have 3 offensive touchdowns.
T. Higgins has 2 of them as well. So, I mean, we're getting no other real, and Mixon has the other one. So we're not really getting any production out of Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase from a touchdown scoring standpoint. We could probably move on to the next takeaway, which is, we'll end it with a positive one here. We got Bucs are smoking the Saints pack. That needs to be something that I have to talk about. You guys know I'm a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. I hate the Saints, and I love the fact that we beat them, because I look at the New Orleans Saints and I see a 7-win team, which is exactly where I want them to stay. I want them to stay in quarterback purgatory with Derek Midd and Dennis Allen as their quarterback, or as their head coach.
Carmichael, baby.
Yeah, dude. 3-1 record for the Bucs, definitely looking promising. Do I think we're going to win the Super Bowl or even do anything in the playoffs? Probably not, but I like watching winning football as much as the next guy. And, if Baker Mayfield can continue his play, like through 4 games so far, we're talking about a guy that's top 6 in the NFL right now in EPA per play from the quarterback position. Yeah. So this was once, the first overall pick in the draft, once a guy that was thought to be a franchise quarterback after his first year with the Cleveland Browns. And Dave Canales is potentially going to get a head coaching job after this year if we continue playing like this. If the Bucs win, 10 or 11 games this year, like no small feat to the offense. The defense has played really well, and that's Todd Bowles' bread and butter, but the offense without Mike Evans for half of this game pretty much dominated. And we also we played against a tough run defense. Rashad White wasn't really going for a while. In this game, it was mostly just like short passes and completions and kind of converting third downs that we've done at such a high level. Like third down conversions, the Bucs have been one of the best in the league throughout the entire season so far.
Yeah, it's funny. Real quick, you mentioned the EPA per play bit, because by the way, I also think we'll get into it in a second when I talk about the Bears. But I mean, Dave Canales is going to be a head coach somewhere next year with what he's doing with this offense, with what he's been doing with Baker. Like, you need that type of offensive mind to be able to develop a young quarterback. I mean, Baker's not young, but this at the same time, it's like he's kind of just been thrown away since his Browns tenure. People have kind of, had their jokes about him. He was still a talented quarterback, with his Browns tenure. Obviously, with the Browns, didn't quite work out. I don't, blame them for moving on to try to go after a guy like Deshaun Watson. But, I mean, he's having the resurgence to the point where you keep building this team, you could realistically win 10 games this year, 9 games this year, especially with that division.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't exactly know if we're going to be in purgatory next year. Like, what if Baker kind of collapses down the stretch and we're picking, 14th in the draft and we don't have an option to get a good quarterback as a result? That would definitely suck. But I'm always going to cheer for my team to win football games. Like, I'm not like, as much as I was like, tank for Caleb Williams entering the season. It's like, once the bullets are actually flying and I see my team winning, I want to see my team winning. Like, that's just the bottom line. Like, I don't want to see them lose games.
Yeah, and real quick, I'm glad you mentioned the EPA, because EPA, like the top 10 this year, is completely over the map. So the top 2 right now in terms of adjusted EPA per play are Brock Purdy and Tua Tagovailoa, aka the Shanny disciples, the Shanny
the system quarterbacks, basically.
The systems. Then you got Josh Allen, who's just absolutely been hooping after that horrific game in week 1. Patrick Mahomes, who despite yesterday having a bad game, is still fucking Patrick Mahomes. Of course, he's going to be in the top 5. Russell Wilson right now is currently the 5th quarterback in adjusted EPA per play. So it is remarkable. Dak Prescott, Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert at 8, Jared Goff and Jordan Love rounding out the top 10 through 4 weeks. Some names that you would expect there, like Joe Burrow, like Jalen Hurts, are currently not even close to that type of range where, like we said, Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff are legitimately hooping right now. So got to give them their credit. I mentioned the number 1 name on this list, Brock Purdy, and that goes into my number 2 takeaway overall, is that fading CMC was my biggest L for fantasy football in the 2023 offseason. I had him as a tier 2 player, had him as my 6th overall player. He should have been up there with Jefferson. He should have been up there with Chase. And the risk was always there, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's like, I should have thought, okay, it's still CMC. He's still going to catch passes. The team's still going to score points. And scoring points is what he's done this season so far. 30 points per game through the first 4 games. He is the highest scoring overall player in fantasy football. And he's had over 5 targets and 100 rushing yards per game each and every game. So not each and every game, sorry. He's averaging over 5 targets per game. He's averaging over 100 rushing yards per game. And he has 7 total touchdowns, in his 4 games he's played this year. The guy's being used as well as you could have imagined, an older running back in the system to be used. He's not like getting overloaded to the point where he's getting 30 touches like Derrick Henry, but at the same time, on the 22 to 26 he's getting with the receiving work, with the scoring opportunity, like, this guy has the highest ceiling of any running back in fantasy right now.
Dude, it's ridiculous because the one thing that because I was slightly higher on McCaffrey than you. I think I ended up with about 6.5% in Best Ball Mania, which is underweight relative to the field. But I was, willing to, forego the fact that I was worried about the guy falling off, which is still a concern. I mean, it's only September. Same. Like, we should have known that, or I guess it's October now. We should have known that this guy was going to perform early on in the season, and the risk does more so apply to later on in the season. But at the same time, like, whenever this guy's on the field, he's going to be an absolute superstar, and they are using him, like you said, in a way that will preserve his best days for the playoffs or for the rest of the season, because this guy is not getting all the disgusting 15 carries a game up the middle, getting hit by a bunch of big defensive linemen. He's mainly getting used in space. And I was actually kind of really open to that idea towards the end of the summer, where I was like, I don't really care if Elijah Mitchell gets like 10 carries a game, because Christian McCaffrey is the one who's going to get the high value touches, the goal line touches, the red zone touches, the receiving work, the, pitch plays, the screen passes, like all the stuff that they design up for Christian McCaffrey. Like, the instinct I had when Christian McCaffrey was traded for by the 49ers was the instinct I should have carried into the season, which was, how the hell are you going to stop this offense? When Christian McCaffrey got to San Francisco, I'm like, this guy has made Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson and Jerick McKinnon and guys that are like journeyman running backs look like superstar caliber players who lead the NFL in like EPA per rush. What is he going to do with Christian McCaffrey was my first initial inclination.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part about it that you did mention briefly there too is, I mean, the one thing in particular, it's fine to have reservations about how he'll last through 17 games, but you're not drafting in your fantasy draft for 17 games. I should have taken that in more. It should have been like, if I was going to fade him, it should have been more so in best ball, because you can't make trades, whatever, if you have that type of concern. In manage specifically, man, like, the guy was always going to get off to a good start, realistically. And his tradability right now, you can get any single asset in fantasy for. If you put him out there, maybe the Jefferson owner is the only one that might think about it, but you go to the Hill owner, you're probably taking Christian McCaffrey. You go to the Bijan owner, you're probably taking Christian McCaffrey. You go to literally any other player in fantasy right now, bar, of course, Justin Jefferson, you're probably taking Christian McCaffrey. So I should have figured that in, like, okay, maybe I don't prefer him for 17 games, but at least for the first few, I can trade him for any player I want if I wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely an L that we're going to need to hold, and especially in managed formats, we got to really, really take that into account. And the same could have been said on the flip side of the coin for a guy like Derrick Henry, who had a bounce back week this week, but has been a little bit up and down so far. We should have also known from a managed league standpoint that Derrick Henry is going to have a lot of value and a lot of tradability early on in the season, even if we're worried about him long-term throughout the rest of the year. So that was definitely something that I've taken away so far from the season. It's like, I wish I got a little bit more Christian McCaffrey, especially in best ball. Takeaway number 3 we got here is that the AFC South is it's kind of frisky. It's a little more competitive than we anticipated. And I mean, you can kind of group in the AFC North, which has been madly disappointing between the Bengals. I mean, the Browns didn't have Deshaun Watson, but they've been kind of disappointing to some degree as well. The Steelers have been a complete non-factor on offense. The Ravens have so many injuries, yet they're still kind of scraping by. So, I mean, the AFC South is the main takeaway here. The Houston Texans aren't just a frisky team. They aren't just like a competitive team. They might actually be really good. Like, they might actually be a playoff team, like you just said. The Tennessee Titans, again, can kind of hang with anybody. They can beat anybody on any given Sunday. Then you have the Jacksonville Jaguars, who still feel like they're figuring things out. They haven't really done anything yet. And then the Indianapolis Colts might have one of the most explosive young playmakers in the league playing quarterback for them, and just surmounted a massive comeback against the Rams, who, again, might actually be a good team. So preseason, we thought, oh, the Colts coming back against the Rams, that's not really that good of accomplishment. But the Rams might be like the 6th or 7th best team in the NFC right now. So that's a legitimate, feat that they kind of accomplished there. And Richardson, with each passing week that goes by, he's using his mobility. He's getting a little bit more accurate. He's finding his playmakers when he needs to. So, I mean, this whole division is actually fun to watch, which is not something I would have said. Let's go back to the Texans for a second, because in my mind, CJ Stroud has played better than any rookie quarterback I can remember since maybe Justin Herbert's rookie year. That's it.
Yeah,
that is the most recent example, I would say, that I can remember. And I think that Stroud might be playing better than Herbert did.
Yeah, so that's the takeaway. 2023 quarterbacks as a whole. Like you mentioned with CJ Stroud, he is the leader of the group right now. If you had to, I know it's early, it's 4 weeks in, but based off what we've seen thus far, if you had to redraft today, he is the number 1 quarterback in the class based off how he's playing. He already looks legitimately like a top 15 quarterback. And we said throughout the offseason, like, okay, we like, the pro readiness, the system he played in, he's just a professional quarterback. If he hits his ceiling, he can be like a baby Dak. He already looks like a baby Dak, and he's 4 fucking weeks into his season. Like 4 weeks into his career. It's remarkable just how comfortable he looks in the pocket, delivering dots down the field, getting not only one, but multiple fantasy relevant Texans receivers at this point. It's honestly remarkable how good he looks. By the way, quick side note, shout out Houston Texans money line as my underdog of the week. They were 3-point underdogs to the Steelers, and not only did they cover 3 points, they downright 30-6 them. So
yeah, great performance for Houston. We saw Dameon Pierce actually kind of get going as well, which is something that I figured would happen eventually. I was like, Dameon Pierce is a good running back. I don't think he's just going to suddenly disappear in this offense. And if Stroud keeps playing the way he is, eventually we're going to get a pretty decent Dameon Pierce game. And we did indeed see that. So that was definitely good to see. Now this offense has a whole new dimension, right? Because they could not run the ball for the first couple games of the season. And now they were able to actually do that. The Steelers defense.
Offensive line's getting healthier too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably why Pierce was not playing well, mainly because, the offensive line generally impacts running games more than it does passing games if you're getting the ball out quick like Stroud has been doing. So I do really like the fact that Pierce got more involved, because he was somebody that I actually, did have decent amount of investment into. I think I have him like 11-12% of my best ball team. So definitely like that with Pierce.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about the other guys, you just mentioned Anthony Richardson goes down 23-0, keeps his composure, ties the game, takes it back to OT. Yeah, they lost to the Rams in OT, but the fact that in the face of adversity, facing a very competent Rams team, not only do you, make it somewhat reasonable, it's like a 23-10 finish. No, you go out and you flat out tie up the game. And I understand he wasn't great from an efficiency standpoint as a passer, but he did what he needed to do to get the Colts back into a fighting position to win that game. Loved what I saw from Anthony Richardson. And although they lost, I mean, I would argue that that's probably the best game we've seen from Bryce Young this season so far.
Yeah, definitely. Bryce still is very clearly at a talent discrepancy when it comes to his supporting cast. Like, as much as going into the season, was there a big difference between the landing spots between Houston, Carolina, and Indianapolis? Like, especially with no Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis, like probably not, right? Like, we weren't expecting a big time advantage one way or another for any of these quarterbacks. What's been the big advantage is Bobby Slowick calling the Texans offense, Shane Steichen calling the Indianapolis Colts offense, and triple condom Frank Reich calling the Carolina Panthers offense. The offensive environment that Bryce Young is playing in versus the rest of these rookie quarterbacks, like, we have creativity. We have guys getting schemed open in Indianapolis and in Houston. Everything is a struggle in Carolina right now. Nobody can create separation outside of like a washed up Adam Thielen. And every play that Bryce Young has, he's like, I saw Josh Norris tweeted out some like chart. Basically, when they would go out of the huddle, Bryce Young would get to the line of scrimmage and he would check to the same play every single time. He would check to like a screen pass on the outside to like DJ Chark or Mingo, or Mingo wasn't playing in this game, but like Thielen or whatever. There's just like nothing that's being done to help Bryce Young right now. And I still believe he was the most talented quarterback above the shoulders and like, holistic prospect profile view coming out of school. And I think he would be doing probably exactly what CJ Stroud is doing in Houston right now if he were a Houston Texan. And I think CJ Stroud would probably look how Bryce Young looks if he was a Carolina Panther right now. So there's a lot going on with these rookie quarterbacks. I know it's easy to look at the bottom line and be like Stroud and Richardson look like top quarterbacks and Bryce Young may be the worst of this group, but they're rookies. So you got to give them some time and you got to let them iron out the kinks, especially when it comes to Bryce. And just because Stroud and Richardson are playing well doesn't mean that's what we should expect from all rookie quarterbacks. Most rookie quarterbacks look like Bryce Young right now.
Yeah, and I mean, and most rookie quarterbacks are dealing with way more talent on their offense than what Bryce Young currently is. He's got a below-average offensive line. He's got a below-average running back room. I like Chuba Hubbard, but I think Miles Sanders right now.
Miles Sanders ranks 56th of 60 qualified running backs in PFF rushing grade right now. Like, he's not been good.
He's been bad. The receivers, I mean, get a real receiving core if you're going to drop the quarterback. That's all I say. And I mean, transitioning, could you just imagine if Bryce Young ended up on his division rival, because the Atlanta Falcons offensive personnel is loaded, but Desmond Ridder made me regret waking up early for that London game. Literally all we needed coming into the year was Desmond Ridder not to be the worst quarterback in the NFL for these pass catchers to smash on the Falcons. If he was like Ryan Tannehill light, he was like 85% of Tannehill, he was a top 25-ish level quarterback, this offense would be smashing right now. But downright, he is the worst quarterback in the league. He is the worst starting quarterback in the NFL for my money, especially with what we saw from Zach Wilson on Sunday Night Football. Like, give me Zach Wilson over Desmond Ridder right now. Desmond Ridder is atrocious. Like I said, elite talent on this offense, 30-plus pass attempts in each of the last 3 games after only 18 in week 1. And he's got, of course, that great offensive line in front of him with the Falcons offensive line to be able to take these deep shots down the field. He's had deep shots open down the field to Kyle Pitts, to Drake London. He cannot hit the mark. He is just inaccurate. He doesn't understand the game well at this point. He's missing easy reads. Like, they are tailor-making this offense for Desmond Ridder right now, and he's still atrocious. Like, could you imagine if he had to go out and play real quarterback, how bad he would look?
Yeah, dude, it'd be crazy, man. Like, if we had Baker Mayfield starting for the Falcons right now, like, they would legit probably be 4-0. Like, honestly, like, they'd probably have not lost a game yet, because Bijan like looks absolutely as advertised. He looks like, if Christian McCaffrey's the best running back in the league right now, Bijan Robinson is probably the second best running back in the league, and he is awesome, like receiving, running the ball. Drake London looks good when he gets opportunities, when he actually gets thrown a accurate pass. Kyle Pitts, he makes some mental lapses and stuff here and there, but he is being schemed open on a lot of these plays. And I mean, Jonnu Smith just randomly has 95 yards for no fucking reason, but I guess that's what we're going to do in the Atlanta Falcons offense. Like, dude, I know it's like very low hanging fruit to bash Arthur Smith, but I think he uses his personnel quite well. And I think all he's been missing is a quarterback. And we've seen Arthur Smith when he has a quarterback, and that quarterback was Ryan Tannehill. Like, Tannehill was nothing special coming out of Miami. They gave him away for nothing. And he was, we talk about EPA and like completion rate over expect. He was like the best quarterback in the league for like 3 years when Arthur Smith was calling the shots there in Tennessee.
Do you think this team, I understand Fields has his own bugaboos, but let's just say hypothetically they got Fields in the offseason. Like, I know that wasn't going to be realistic, but hypothetically they had Fields all offseason instead of Ridder. They tailored the offense around Fields. Like, they're 3-1 right now, right?
Yeah, probably. As bad as Fields can be, like, I think you're getting, at least with
just the
Fields,
rushing
like, you're
element
getting
alone.
the turnover-worthy plays with Fields, like the plays that make you scratch your head a little bit. But Desmond Ridder is giving you those, and probably even more, without anything on top of it. Like, he's giving you, like, middling quarterback play at his, like, best, and then at his worst, he's giving you, like, the Zach Wilson plays, which is, like, not his calling card. He was supposed to be this, like, conservative, like, never turns the ball over quarterback, but he's not going to like elevate the play of others around him. Not only is he not turning the ball over, he's also not elevating the play of others. Like, he was supposed to be an accurate, smart, doesn't turn the ball over quarterback, and he has been none of the above so far this season.
He's an absolute train wreck, and until they turn over to Taylor Heineke, like they're probably third place in the division. Like, I think if they turn over to Taylor Heineke, they could realistically be in the mix for the title.
They're a better team with us than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Taylor Heineke as their quarterback, 100%. Taylor Heineke will give you some boneheaded plays, but he will at least give you some upside plays. And for Kyle Pitts managers out there, like, you got to hold, man. And I'd probably be buying him right now because Kyle Pitts, once Taylor Heineke takes over the quarterback position, and once for Drake London as well, he's going to push the ball downfield a lot more than what Desmond Ridder is doing. Like, Arthur Smith is allowing Desmond Ridder to throw the ball. Like, that is the most underreported storyline of this entire situation, is that this guy is throwing, like you said, over 30 times a game, which is way more than Marcus Mariota was throwing last year. He's just so bad that we don't notice. Like, we are still getting the same old Arthur Smith offense, even though it's like 10 more pass attempts a game.
Dude, it's so funny because even with average quarterback play right now, like Drake London's probably a top 25 wide receiver. Kyle Pitts is probably a top 6 tight end. Like, we are living, like, there's a different multiverse right now where Desmond Ridder is actually like the quarterback that they probably thought he could be, this game manager average guy. Like, I'm not going to say like what's like a mid-range like even like a Derek Carr,
Jared Goff, maybe.
Jared Goff. Yeah, someone in that range, like quarterback 15 to 20. Any of those guys, man, right now are fucking smashing. And real quick, speaking of, you're telling us to pick Bijan over CMC. Do you still feel that way? I just see a comment, so I'll quickly go to it since we're talking about the Falcons right now. I think if you have to redraft right now, CMC has to be the one, just based off what we're seeing from this offense. Like, the offense is too good. His involvement is too high. Elijah Mitchell hasn't been the factor that we thought he would be. Like, he's probably the second overall player in fantasy right now.
Yeah, he would be the second pick,
PPR.
And maybe even the first, depending on, you might want to take him over Jefferson potentially. I still don't think we were wrong on Bijan whatsoever. No, like, he's still averaging like 20 points a game. Like, he's still been really, really good. The problem is that CMC is literally going nuclear and absolutely erupting right now. So you can't discount what CMC has done.
CMC's having a legendary season right now. And I mean,
literally,
I just didn't.
For 4 games, he's literally outproducing his 2019 season right now, which is pretty insane. So we kind of touched on the Bears and Justin Fields. I mean, this team is bad, man. And they are really bad. Like, they had it. Bad. They had this game. They were up, 28-7. Justin Fields completing passes, looking like a capable quarterback, running the ball, doing what he needs to do. And they're outscored 24-0 down the stretch of this game. This was like a who can lose this game type of game. Like the Broncos versus the Falcons. It was not who's going to win this game. It was who's going to lose this game. And it was the Falcons that did so. On the bright side, if you're a Chicago Bears fan, not only do you have the number 1 overall pick right now via your own draft pick, the Carolina Panthers also sent you their number 1 draft pick because of the Bryce Young trade up. So you now hold possession. Is it 1 and 2 in the draft that they have right now?
Currently 1 and 2. They're the 2 0-4 teams in the league.
Right. So you're on pace right now. Again, this might not keep up, but I don't anticipate Carolina to get much better. I don't anticipate the Chicago Bears to win more than 3 or 4 games this season as well. You could pair Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. together in the draft.
This sounds so psychotic. And maybe this is a low line because the NFC South is still a mess of a division. Like, realistically, like, I can see the Panthers maybe sneaking a couple games in there from like the Saints, or you guys maybe split with them, or the Falcons. But if I had to set a line right now of over under 5.5 combined wins between the Bears and the Panthers, are you taking the over or the under?
I think I would probably take the under. I think both teams look like 2 to 4 win teams, probably. Yeah. Like, I think we're talking about 2 teams that should be picking top 5 in the NFL draft. And even if the Bears aren't picking 1 and 2, like, they have a very reasonable chance of pairing a quarterback with Marvin Harrison, even if they're picking 1 and 4, because there's a good chance that other teams will need quarterbacks. Maybe they'll need offensive linemen. There's a couple good offensive linemen in this draft, or you can always make trades and that kind of thing. Dude, this team needs to trade away Justin Fields and start Tyson Bagent and absolutely embrace this fucking tank. Matt Eberflus is going to get fired. Ryan Poles is going to get fired. They're not going to think this way. There's no point of them thinking this way, but ownership should force their hand. Be like, you need to trade Justin Fields, get what you can get for him, because, there should be interest around Justin Fields.
You get a 3 right now from the Falcons in a heartbeat. You get a 3 from the Falcons.
You should be able to get a day 2 pick for Justin Fields. Well, maybe you can't get like a 1, which probably wouldn't make any sense. Maybe you can't even get a 2, but if you can get a 3rd rounder and like a 5th round conditional or something on top of it from the Jets or from the Falcons, like you said, from the Broncos, maybe they want to have them learn behind Russ or something like that. Like, there's teams that out there that probably would be willing to trade for Justin Fields.
The Cowboys got Trey Lance for a 4. And I would argue right now that, like, although Fields has been bad, like, you're still taking like the upside that he's shown in the NFL right now over what we've seen or not seen, quote unquote, quite frankly, from Trey Lance. So if Lance can net a 4, like, your ask should be a 2. And if you have to settle for a 3 just to make sure you get Caleb Williams, you have to do it, man, because Fields doesn't have a chance over there. Fields literally does not have a chance given the offensive coaching, given the personnel. He played extremely well in that first half, but keep in mind, that Denver Broncos defense may be the worst defense I have ever seen. Like, it is horrific. And I don't understand why it's so bad, because it was literally a top 10 defense in EPA just last year. But like, you'd be better off having like the Georgia defense out there at this point, man, or the Michigan defense out there at this point. Like, the Broncos defense can't stop anybody.
Which is weird, because they were like, dude, it seemed like everywhere Vance Joseph goes, the defense just sucks. Like, maybe this guy just can't coach in the NFL. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, his defenses have like never been good, it feels like. So I don't know why the hell people keep giving him defensive coordinator jobs. And it's also super weird that he's the Broncos defensive coordinator after once being fired as their head coach, which is also really, really strange to me. But let's rattle through a couple more takeaways, and then we'll close off this this section and get into the dynasty trades portion. I will let you kick it off with a guy that I experienced a very fun Sunday as a result of my like DFS pseudo lineup that I had with Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen on one side, with a Devon Achane bring back in my home league lineup this week. Devon Achane, dude, this guy could win some people some leagues.
He is going to win people leagues. So he officially took over the number 1 running back mantle for the Dolphins. And we'll see how that kind of materializes with Jeff Wilson coming off the pup. But anytime a rookie running back is able to take over the backfield, 32 of the snaps, 66% of the overall snaps, 42% of the rushing attempts, aka the rushing share, 68% route participation with a 15% target share. Outsnapped Raheem Mostert, outtouched Raheem Mostert, ran more routes than Raheem Mostert, and commanded the same amount of targets as Raheem Mostert. This is an interesting trend to keep going on. We are in week 4. We always hear that the young rookie is always going to get more playing time as the season comes along. So the fact that Devon Achane, after being inactive in week 1, getting 8% of the snaps in week 2, getting 42% of the snaps last week, has already increased up to a 66% snap share. Like, this guy's going to be a top 15 running back, maybe even a top 10 running back each and every week of my rankings moving forward.
I would like to ask you a couple questions rest of season rankings wise. Devon Achane or Player X, just because I have Devon Achane on my home league roster, so I do really feel like I'm biased on him. I'm so glad I didn't sell this guy last week. Like, we talked about him as like a potential sell high, see what you can get for him. But like, again, only if you're going to get like top 10 or top 15 running back.
Mostert was always the sell. Mostert was always the sell.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Who would you rather have rest of season? Rookie on rookie violence, Jahmyr Gibbs or Devon Achane?
Devon Achane.
Okay. Who would you rather have rest of season? Pass catcher on pass catcher violence, DeAndre Swift or Devon Achane?
Devon Achane.
Who would you rather have, Breece Hall or Devon
Achane?
Who would you rather have, James Cook or Devon Achane?
Devon Achane.
Who would you rather have, Kenneth Walker or Devon Achane?
Devon Achane.
Really? So you're suggesting that
he's a top 10 running back.
Running back rest of season.
He's a top 10. Correction, by the way, Achane or whatever he actually wants to go by. Whatever. Regardless, I would make the argument with you right now that I would. Okay, so Ramondre would be going below him for sure as well. Yeah, so that's another one that I'm dropping way deep. By the way, these are
Kyren Williams or Devon Achane.
Devon Achane. I think your conversation point starts with like Devon Achane or Josh Jacobs,
which is
I think that is the name. That is the decision point. And if somebody said Achane, I wouldn't blame them. I wouldn't.
Jacobs doesn't look like the same player this year that he did last year. He's still getting the same workload, and that's all well and good. And he finally got into the end zone this week. But yeah, dude, if you told me that Devon Achane is like comparable rest of season fantasy production wise to Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, like I wouldn't be totally.
I have him way above Derrick Henry now.
I think Derrick Henry has shown me enough that I would still take him over Devon Achane rest of the season. But with Achane, dude, like you're getting a guy that doesn't need 25 touches a game. Like he got 14 opportunities in this game or something like that. Like all we need out of Achane is scheme touches like he was getting, receiving work like he was getting. Like you said, he had 68% of the routes for that team. they're playing a really tough defense. Buffalo Bill's been really good on defense, and he still was able to break off a long run. He was still able to find the end zone twice. Also, side note too, one of my buddies put down a $3 bet on 4 separate players to score 2+ touchdowns. Nico Collins, Devon Achane, Justin Jefferson, and Calvin Ridley, who scored 1 touchdown. He was a Calvin Ridley touchdown away from 96 grand on a $3 bet.
Who was it?
Simon.
How mad was he?
Dude, I wouldn't be able to sleep if that happened to me.
I mean,
dude.
on the bright side,
touchdown away from 96 grand. Are you kidding me?
It stinks, no doubt about it. But on the bright side, at least that happened in the first game and not the last. I would not be able to live with myself if the whole parlay hit. I needed the last game to hit, and it failed on that one. So the fact that it happened at 9:30, he probably just said, whatever, I lost $3.
He lost hope. And then the shitty thing too is that Ridley had like a bomb that he drew a PI on. And if he catches that ball, all he has to do is break 1 tackle and he scores another touchdown there. So, I mean, I would be sick if I was in that position right now this morning. But yeah, Devon Achane, man, like he's got to be the type of dude that you're just not selling. Like, I'm so glad I sold Breece Hall for Garrett Wilson and Tyler Algier, because now I fortify my receiver core. Garrett Wilson had like fucking 13 targets last night or something. And I had Achane slide right into my RB1 slot probably now, because Ramondre's not performing at a high level at this point in time. Speaking of Garrett Wilson, we got to talk about Zach Wilson, dude. We have to talk about what Zach Wilson did on Sunday night. That was easily the best game I've ever seen him play. He looked pretty lost early on in the game, 3 and outs, punts, whatever. Dude, a couple bad throws here and there. But he kind of got invigorated at the end of that game. Like, everybody seemed to kind of rally around him. The one thing I've never really understood with the Jets is, like, I get it. Like, if you're Garrett Wilson, if you're Allen Lazard, if you're whoever other than Tyler Conklin, because he loves Tyler Conklin, I get why you would just like give up. You're like, this guy can't play quarterback. Our team's going to suck. Like, but like at the same time, like, doesn't it make more sense to try and like give the kid some confidence and like rally around him to see if he actually has what it takes to play? Like, I'm not in that situation, so I know it's got to be really challenging when you're Garrett Wilson. You're open like half the time and you never get the ball. But at the same time, like, why weren't they doing this already?
Yeah, well, I will say, like, that is the most supportive I've ever seen them be for Zach Wilson. And I mean, it goes with it. Like, you see this guy playing awful football, and then suddenly he has the game of his life, makes one mistake, and then just wants to blame himself. Like, then you're like, okay, you know what, man? Like stop. Like, you played extremely well. Yeah, you fumbled, and like technically they ran out the clock from there, but like, they're not in position to even have a chance at that game if he doesn't play the way he did. Like, they were down 17-0. Everybody on Twitter was like, oh, I should turn this game off now. We know the script. It's going to finish 31-0. Look what happened to the Chiefs Bears last week. Justin Fields is more talented than Zach Wilson. What do you think they're going to do to Zach Wilson? And then safety happens. Mahomes has a turnover. And all of a sudden, this guy's just like, fuck the narrative, man. Let me go ball out. Like, that's literally what he did. He was hooping last night. He was absolutely hooping. And now they play the Broncos next week. If there's going to be any game to get Zach Wilson more momentum coming off of this game on Sunday Night Football, it'll be against that Broncos defense. They just made Justin Fields look like the best quarterback in the NFL for the first 2.5 quarters.
Yeah, so I'm reading the comments in the chat right now, and everybody's really, it's pronunciation gate right now. Everybody's just screaming Achane in the chat. Anyways, but yeah, the game that Zach Wilson put up this past week actually gave me a lot of hope for Garrett Wilson. Just knowing that it looks like he kind of he's so frustrating because you see it. Like, that throw that he had to Tyler Conklin that wasn't a touchdown, the one that he like drops at the end, and the one to Garrett Wilson that was just out past like his outstretched arms. Like Collinsworth said it on the broadcast. He's like, Aaron Rodgers makes those throws. I'm like, dude, Zach Wilson made those throws. Like, he was like an inch short of those being completed. Tyler Conklin, if he's a better tight end, probably catches that ball. If Garrett Wilson's 6'2" instead of 5'11", he probably catches that ball. Like, he was so close to like having some really like jaw-dropping plays in that game. And while the bad sucks and it's really annoying if you're a Jets fan, this guy's like, he probably is your best option right now. Like, sans like Jacoby Brissett, who the Commanders probably don't want to trade. Yeah, like Dalton, who the Panthers probably, like, those guys are better options. Don't get me wrong. But like, People were saying, like, go trade for Jameis Winston. Like, dude, Jameis Winston's the same exact situation here, except Zach Wilson already knows the offense and at least has a little bit more upside.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you mentioned too, like there were some plays like tight end going over the linebacker. He's layering the ball on seam routes. Like he knows where to put the football now, which is something that I feel like at times he's like, it sounds so cliche to say like, oh, a quarterback has to know where to put the football, but I don't think people realize like there's a difference between throwing the ball to open receivers and placing the ball to make the receivers open. Like that is one thing that people don't realize. Like, yeah, the linebacker is covering the tight end, but if you put it in the right spot and you float it over the top, there's nothing you can do to play the ball. So in the NFL, that is open, even though it looks like a linebacker's on him, which it was basically the majority of the night, linebackers on him. If you put it in the right spot, it is an easy completion. And you see Zach Wilson starting to understand how to layer his throws, doesn't have to gun everything, just know when to layer it, know when to add some touch, know when to gun it in there. Like he's got the arm talent to be able to do that, man. If he can figure out mentally when to use his arm talent to his advantage, man, I understand. Like it's funny we're saying this and like having such a glimmer of hope for one game after two and a half years almost now of complete, just absolute garbage. But I'm excited, man. I'm excited.
I will. This is gonna be famous last words right here. I care to understand who the next opponents are for the New York Jets.
Broncos. I just said that. Yeah.
The Broncos, the Eagles, who have not been good defending the pass this year. The Commanders just kind of ate their lunch this past
I'm worried about their offensive line in that game, though.
I would be worried about it as well. The New York Giants after that. The Chargers. The Raiders. Like, dude, they got like 4 winnable games there.
Yeah.
And not only are they winnable, they're like Zach Wilson could get some confidence games. Like he's not playing the Patriots and Cowboys again.
Hey, Zach Wilson shocks the world, upsets the Eagles. You heard it here first.
Okay. Also, Logan said this in the chat, and I think this term is hilarious. I'm not like on TikTok, so I don't understand, but the glazing is insane about Devon Achane when we were talking about him. I've never heard this term until yesterday, and I think it's fucking hilarious.
Oh, it's jokes.
And if anybody has ever heard the term the glazing, it just basically means that we're like meat riding Devon Achane, basically. Like, and I thought that was hilarious that he just said the glazing is insane because when we were watching the game in my Discord with my buddies, everybody just kept saying the glazing is insane when I was talking about Zach Wilson anytime he had a nice throw or whatever. So that is the big takeaways of week 4. I'll let you get one last one in.
Last takeaway, Ron Rivera wears 3 condoms during sex. You have a last-second touchdown, no time left, makes it a 31-30 game. Your offense has had all the momentum up to that point. You've moved the ball at will against the Eagles. Sam Howell has looked incredibly good. I think he had like 290 passing yards in the game. You're on the road in Philly as a big underdog in a division rival type of situation, and you kick the PAT to take it to extra time, overtime. Like, what are we doing, man? What
2
are we
points.
doing?
Just win the game, dude. I feel like Rivera has done this already too. Didn't he already do this once where he like went for the win? Or am I making that up?
I mean, like I know he has in the past, but like regardless though, like the Eagles are undefeated, man. If you take them into overtime, they're already going to be the favorite in that environment at home.
Don't leave it up to a coin toss, dude. Like if you lose the coin toss, they're going to score. Like that's just what's going to happen. So you might as well try and just end the game. Like everybody in Lincoln Financial Field was probably thinking like, please don't go for 2. Like they were probably
everybody was. And I'll tell you right now, if they go for 2, they're probably getting it. Given that game environment.
Yeah. Is that the right stadium, by the way? I don't actually remember if that's the Eagles stadium or not. I think Lincoln Financial Field's theirs, but that might be wrong. Anyways, let's get into the dynasty trades. Of course, every week after we talk about the recap, we want to break down kind of what the dynasty market looks like. We've picked out some trades from some notable names, guys that are probably on the move in a lot of dynasty leagues right now. Let's kick it off with Roommate's trade here. You guys can see it on the screen. A 12-team Superflex Start 10 league. Roommate is a rebuilder, and he is receiving the Drake London and the 2025 third side of this trade in exchange for DK Metcalf. Drake London is a dude that we'll talk about in a later trade in this video as well. He's a guy that absolutely has to be one of the biggest buys in all of Dynasty if you're a rebuilding team or if you're a one-year punt team, because the NFL stands for not for long. There is no way in hell that Desmond Ridder is going to stay the quarterback of this team going into next offseason. If you guys are a one-year punt, if you're trying to shed production from your team, like it looks like roommates doing here, DK Metcalf has been productive. He's on a better offense. He's going to score fantasy points. He would very easily probably outscore Drake London the rest of the season unless something drastically changes in Atlanta. Why not go get the guy who's way younger, who's still performing peripherals wise? He's scoring touchdowns. He's doing what he needs to do. But we've already talked about this on numerous occasions. When Drake London finally gets a quarterback, we're talking about a guy that legitimately has wide receiver 1 upside because of the peripherals he's put out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, he's commanding targets. He looks really good. And if Zach Wilson keeps playing like this, I agree there. Or sorry,
Yeah, absolutely. So we
or,
also have a trade here. Did
sorry,
you
sorry,
put this into
sorry,
the doc here?
real quick. You meant Drake London, right?
Yes, Drake London.
Sorry,
Absolutely.
Sorry. I zoned out. I meant when they move off of Desmond Ridder. My apologies.
Yeah, you're good. Did you put your trades into this? Because if not, I'll just go to the Taylor Gang ones while you're doing that.
Wait. Oh, in the thing?
Yeah, can you put them in the
overlay?
overlay?
I thought you did. Oh, good. Sorry,
okay,
my
I'll
apologies.
do Taylor Gang here.
Okay.
As 2 of the trades are going to break down. So Taylor Gang said he made both of these trades, one of them involving Drake London as well. Before the game started this week, he said he's selling high on Michael Pittman in both cases. So he had 2 Michael Pittman shares, decided to move off of them because both, Michael Pittman has performed at a high level so far this year. So he sells off Michael Pittman in exchange for Drake London in a 1-year punt. Again, very similar to the first trade. You sell off a guy in Michael Pittman, who's been very productive, just like DK Metcalf has been productive, and you get Drake London straight up. I think honestly, you probably could have gotten more on top of Michael Pittman or on top of Drake London for Michael Pittman. Like you probably in some leagues that are reactive could have gotten away with Drake London and a second, even if it's in like 2025 or 2026 in exchange for Michael Pittman. But I think this is a really good trade. Any thoughts on that? London versus Pittman? I mean, like I prefer London still straight up, so I just prefer the trade. There, especially in your situation, shed the production 1-year punt type of team.
Yeah, I would want London there personally. As good as Pittman has been playing, like London still has the target commanding ability that he does. We just need to see the quarterback play increase. And if realistically Desmond Ridder keeps playing like this, it will, whether that's Taylor Heineke, whether that's them making a move to get a quarterback, because this is a team that's a real team that should be able to make the playoffs in the NFC if they do have settled quarterback play. And absolute worst case scenario, they draft one next year. Whether I don't think they're going to be high enough to get like, Caleb Williams or Drake May, but maybe a Michael Penix, maybe a JJ McCarthy, maybe
Penix would be a perfect
Nix.
fit for their offense for what it's worth.
That would be
He'd
fun.
actually be a very perfect fit for their offense. But yeah, definitely on board with that. We can talk more Pittman here because he sold his other share of Michael Pittman by the looks of it. And Dalton Kincaid, who is starting to pick things up a little bit snap share wise. He's starting to outsnap Dawson Knox, but still, starting like a rookie tight end is supposed to start, not like what Sam Laporta and Luke Musgrave are doing, who have taken over their jobs completely. But you sell off Pittman, you sell off Kincaid, you get Garrett Wilson. I think this is very easily the Garrett Wilson side for me. Are you on the same page here? You got basically a 2nd-round startup pick for, like absolute nuts. Like if you're super high on Michael Pittman, how high in Dynasty wide receiver rankings has he climbed to at this point in time?
4th-round startup pick, maybe max.
Yeah, like is he a top 20 dynasty receiver for somebody who's really high on him? Maybe. Like I have like guys like Christian Watson and Ayuk kind of in that back end of the top 20 area. But if you wanted to put Michael Pittman as high as that, I don't think that's outrageous. I think that's probably the highest he would find himself, at least in my rankings, because I do have him like within the same tier as like guys like Christian Watson and Brandon Ayuk there. So yeah, I think it was smart to sell high on Pittman, especially if you're in a 1-year punt. He's young still, like he's only 26 years old, but if you can get younger by going after a Drake London or a Garrett Wilson, then it definitely makes some sense in that situation, both of whom I prefer straight up over Michael Pittman. So definitely some good trades there for Taylor Gang. We also see a trade here. Looks like it came in from Avarice in the Discord. Yep. So 12-team Superflex, start 9, full PPR. Kyren Williams has been off to an absolute tear. We didn't really talk about the Rams. Obviously, Puka Nacua continues to make me look stupid, and Kyren Williams continues to get a lot of work. He got a lot less work this week. He didn't get 100% of the snaps, 97% or whatever he had the last 2 games, but he was still like 75, 80% of the snaps and getting most of the work, scoring 2 touchdowns in this game. I'm going to keep it a buck. I think you should have gotten a lot more than this for Kyren Williams. Even if that's an early second, sure. But if that's a random 2024 second, from like a 2-2 team or something like that, or a 1-3 team even, like I think Kyren Williams, you should be able to package him with something else and go up and get a 1st-round pick or an equivalently valued asset.
He's very tricky right now because obviously he's very, very productive. But at the same time, I feel like the reason why his value hasn't elevated to that point is that people kind of realize, like, if you're in a dynasty league, ask someone their thoughts about Kyren Williams, the talent. And I bet you 9 out of the 10 people, or sorry, 11 out of the 12 people in your league, maybe 10 out of the 12, like if you're just excluding yourself, would say that he's not a very talented football player. And I think that's true, to be honest. I don't think he's a great player. However, for the intermediate, for the contending team right now, he's going to give you a top 10 baseline each and every week, given the usage he's getting. Now, could that change in 2 weeks if they make a play for Jonathan Taylor? Sure. Could that change in 2 weeks if maybe they want a complimentary thumper like Leonard Fournette brought in?
Or
sure.
even if Ronnie Rivers and Zach Evans start to work in more, like
sure.
There's no commitment to Kyren Williams. He's like a 5th round pick and he's small. Like, and he's also not been super efficient on the ground. He's been solid. Like, he's definitely done the job that he needs to do, but he's not a guy that's just going to, like, if he goes down for 2 weeks with injury, let's say he, like, hurts his hamstring or something, like, what happens to the backfield then?
To put it simply, if you gave Devon Achane Kyren Williams workload right now, not only would he be the fantasy running back 1, it wouldn't be close. Like that is the level of like inefficiency that we're dealing with Kyren Williams right now versus like what Devon Achane could even bring to the. And I understand like schematics are different. Like I'm just talking about straight up the efficiency of the player inserted into the situation with that amount of volume.
Yeah, it's crazy. I saw a tweet. Somebody tweeted out, if Devon Achane goes for 0 yards on his next 30 carries, he'll still be over 5 yards a carry.
He's averaging like 11.5 right now.
It's ridiculous what this guy is doing. So yeah, I'm on the same page with Kyren. I think if you have him in Dynasty, like I'm definitely looking to shop him. I have him in one league and I'm kind of seeing if I can get myself a more solidified asset or whatever the case is. But I do think like I want to get something solid in return for Kyren. Like I do think his value has climbed, substantially. And I think that if you trade Kyren Williams in a 2nd round pick, you should be able to get a 1st. Or if you trade Kyren Williams and Chris Godwin, you should be able to buy low on Christian Watson or buy low on somebody like that. Like I want to get something really impactful going forward rather than just like a second, like, because normally it's like random running back pops off, get a 2nd round pick. It's always a profitable move.
Yep.
But Kyren Williams isn't like a random running back popping off. He's a guy that's getting workhorse usage. It's not like AJ Dillon when Aaron Jones went down or something.
He's an RB1 popping off. Usually when we hear running back like randomly popping off, they're giving
like
you
Jerome Ford would fetch a 2, and
Yes.
I would take a 2 any day of the week for Jerome Ford. But Kyren Williams, like you said, is getting RB1 usage, RB1 production versus like RB2 production, which is usually what we're seeing. You sell that guy for a second kind of situation.
I mean, I think the comparable situation there, like obviously rework the deal now that Puka's like gone up a ton in value and maybe Addison, like you can make like, even if you viewed like Puka and Addison, like straight up, like I think a deal that made sense is like the one that I did with Flet, where I gave him an Addison and a 2 at the time for Puka, Kyren, and Jerome Ford. Obviously Puka now has like escalated so much in value, but like, let's just say that was Quentin Johnson or a product like Deebo Samuel or something like that. Then it's like, okay, you know what? Win now type of wide receiver, Kyren Williams, see if you can package up and get like a Jordan Addison and 2 or a, maybe you can get Kyren for Jackson Smith and Jigba right now. Like go up,
which is pretty crazy, but that actually might happen in some people's leagues if they're worried about the way that Jackson Smith and Jigba started out the season. So let's talk about Claire's trade. So this is me and Danny are both in this league for what it's worth. I'm completely tanking right now.
My team is a unit.
Well, I was tanking at least, but CJ Stroud and Nico Collins had other plans, and I almost won this week. Cole Kmet decided to pop off for like 30 points as well. But Claire has made a couple trades in this league. She's a competitive team. Isiah Pacheco and a 4th acquired for Rashee Rice and a 3rd. I think you got Pacheco for a discount, to be honest. I don't think like what would you value Rashee Rice as right now?
I mean, to be fair, going into the week, like we did have concerns about the workload. It was made 5 days ago. I like it kind of for both sides. Again, now I probably would have rathered it. Maybe if it was Pacheco and a 3 for Rashee and a 2, that's probably
what I think the value should be. Yeah, because I think Rashee Rice is probably worth what, like an early 3rd?
Yeah, about that, give or take. And I think you can make the argument that Pacheco is probably worth like a mid
an early
maybe
2, probably for
around there. Yeah, around there. So, I mean, like if you change it to a 3 and a 2 now, it would probably be a little bit more fair. But I mean, I don't blame, for example, AJ's the one who made the deal. I don't blame him for doing this going into the week because Pacheco showed some upside in this game that we hadn't seen up to the season to this point, which thankfully for me and the FSC Listener League, I do actually have him in that redraft league. And if Aaron Jones gets up to form. I already scored 193 this week. So overall, though, I like it from a contending standpoint. Get Pacheco, buy some points there. Don't mind that move. And then from AJ's, again, I would have liked to see a better pick swap, but I understand the process behind it.
I would have just wanted a better player. Like, I'm fine with the 3-4 pick swap and you get rid of Pacheco. I just would have wanted like Josh Downs or somebody. Like, I would have wanted a better receiver. Like Rashee Rice, I didn't think was a good prospect, and I still don't. He's had a couple flashes here and there, but he's pretty much the same as all of these Kansas City wide receivers, which is none of them are startable, and every one of them is going to have a couple good weeks here and there, and that's why they're good in best ball and nothing else. So this other move that Claire made here. So I think things changed here. So she's a contender, but she also like lost Nick Chubb, which is hence the Pacheco move. Like she needed a running back, but I think she also said like, I want to make sure my team isn't like going to die after this year, basically. And Travis Kelce's a really old asset, obviously, right? Like he's, maybe he walks off into the sunset with T Swifty after this year and, lives it up and gets a old white picket fence or whatever. But I think this is a pretty decent return for a guy in Travis Kelce. Unless this is a different league, this might not be the same league. I'm not exactly sure.
Definitely. This is
it is a different league. Okay, sorry, I didn't know if this was the same league or not. Okay, so scratch what I just said. Basically, this is a different league, and I think she did say I lost Nick Chubb, and I can't really contend now because I don't have Nick Chubb anymore.
Yeah, sorry. The first league was in no flock, and we're both in that as well.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So this league, like she said, she has for reference for those in mind, she already has I believe it was
Laporta and Waller.
Laporta and Waller. Yeah. So I mean, realistically, in her spot, like you don't really need a tight end. You get to liquidate Kelce into a mid first and a second, and now you do have some buying power because, like you said, you could either hold those picks and what should be a really, really good class next year with 2024. I mean, that mid 2024 first. What if that gets you Brock Bowers? Then you already upgrade at tight end to begin with, and you don't even have to spend too.
Like maybe I could have gotten more for Kelce, but I would say a 1 and a 2 is like probably the best you're going to get for Kelce, even though he's probably worth 2 firsts in terms of what he can provide for your team. Nobody's willing to do that. Like in most competitive leagues, nobody's willing to give you 2 first-round picks for a 34-year-old tight end. So she's like, I'm contending, but I'm still on the younger side. I have CJ Stroud, who's like my quarterback 3, lost Nick Chubb, so I'm probably not going to be able to contend now. So this makes sense. This is kind of like a retool trade, 1-year punt. You probably can't contend anymore with Nick Chubb going down with injury, and it's a good pivot move.
Depending how high the quarterbacks go in the draft, maybe like obviously if like a top 10 quarterback goes, you probably put him over Bowers. But real quick, like Bowers probably goes 104, 105 for the most part if you're projecting the rookie class right now.
I would expect him to probably go later than that just because he's a tight end. I would expect him to probably be 105 to 108 somewhere.
But that's kind of what I'm referring to, because I know right off the bat, as soon as he comes into the NFL and gets drafted in the top 5 to 10, I will have him ranked higher than Kelce in my dynasty rankings.
Yeah, well, and knowing that you have Laporta, there's no reason to even draft.
That's
Bowers.
What I mean,
like,
right?
If there's a guy in a similar tier as Bowers this time come rookie drafts, and you just draft Emeka Egbuka or Malik Neighbors or Xavier Worthy or Michael Penix or something like that, then you can just do that. I mean, it sounds like she said CJ Stroud's her quarterback 3, so it looks like you're going to be probably adding a skill position player with this pick. Maybe RB1 fits into that range if it's Travion Henderson or something like that. The RB class not looking great so far. I'll definitely touch on that later in the week, but definitely a pretty good situation to be in. So we are going to go into segment number 3 now, where we talk about the waiver wire. And definitely so far this season, this is the worst week for waivers.
By far.
We had some studs last week. We had Devon Achane. We had Tank Dell available in a lot of leagues. This week, my number 1 waiver ad, I don't know, in terms of fab budget, who is your, like, what's the allocation of fab budget to your number 1 guy? You don't have to tell me who it is, but like, what's the most amount of money you'd be willing to plop down this week?
So I haven't specific or explicitly written them out, but realistically, I wouldn't spend more than like 15% on anybody in this list.
Okay, so let's get it kicked off. I'll start with my number 5, which I'm not sure if you're going to have or not, but I think some people will be in need of this position, given that Pat Freiermuth has suffered a hamstring injury. Kyle Pitts isn't performing. I think Gerald Everett's a decent, like, right off the waiver wire guy that you might be able to play this week, just given the fact that Donald Parham suffered a wrist injury, and with Gerald Everett, we haven't really seen him get like a full allotment of snaps until this week. So you guys can see it on the screen there. He ran 18 of the 31 routes, 45 of the 65 snaps. And with Parham out going forward, I think potentially, if that is what materializes, Gerald Everett might be a legitimate play. Knowing that Mike Williams is also out, Keenan Allen's the main target there. Josh Palmer got a lot of targets this week. I think that Gerald Everett makes some sense if you're in need of a tight end. I wouldn't spend a dime of fab on him, probably put a 0% bid. But if you lost Freiermuth or if you lost somebody like that, I think that Everett makes some sense there if you guys need a tight end.
Yeah, I mean, and the guy that is at 5 for me, because Gerald Everett actually isn't in my top 5, though I do think, top 10-ish level pickup, I will say I like, but I just have 5 guys that I would rather have. Uh, Everett is on bye. What the fuck? Yeah, no, we're more so talking about moving forward because Parham is hurt. But
Right,
I
right.
mean,
That's a good point. I actually didn't know that. So
yeah,
yes, if you don't need a tight end this week, obviously you can't use Everett because he's on bye week. But going forward, if Parham is
yeah,
out significant time, which it sounds like he could be because it looks like he like broke his wrist or something, then he would
yeah,
be a guy going forward. If you need a tight end this week, Zach Ertz is probably available in a lot of leagues still, and you
yep.
could go out and grab him.
I mean, I'm just going to stay in the AFC West with my number 5. My number 5 is Jaleel McLaughlin, running back of the Denver Broncos. This was a tweet from Jeff Mueller, if I can find it real quick. Javonte Williams, I'll be your Schefter translator, hit flexor strain as suspected. There was concern for soft injury, tissue injury. Could likely be a compensation from ramping up too quickly off the ACL. So it's sounding like he's going to miss 1 to 2 games. And the usage of this backfield once he went down, yes, Samaje Perine got the majority of the snaps, but seeing that Jaleel McLaughlin going from the third string running back who probably didn't expect much work off his plate going into the week to now he's commanding 33% of the snaps, was by far the more efficient runner out of the two between him and Samaje Perine. The way I kind of look at it is that he already commanded a certain portion of the snaps as a rookie running back. He looked good on his snaps. And going forward, if Javonte Williams is going to miss 1, 2, maybe even 3 weeks if it keeps re-aggravating, then you're looking at maybe a 50-50 backfield of an efficient running back on an offense that has been one of the sneakier offenses in the league so far this year. I don't think people realize just how good Russell Wilson has been playing, just how good this Broncos offense has actually looked at. If Jaleel McLaughlin can show that this efficiency is here to stay and he could be, a focal point of this backfield, I don't mind mixing in a 5% fab bid on him. Like realistically, I wouldn't spend more than that because I know when Javonte comes back, he'll probably be relegated to the third string role yet again. But I just like betting on young players that show upside from an efficiency standpoint. And given the fact that Javonte Williams will miss time, I think if you're in desperation, you need like a Jalen Warren like type of esque pick to just shove into your lineup and hope he outplays the incumbent starter. I think McLaughlin's that guy.
Yeah, and McLaughlin too, like enters an offense that hasn't really run the ball very well all season so far. They rank fifth from last in terms of their running backs, like PFF grades. Like Javonte and Perine haven't been very good. McLaughlin's actually looked the best of the three. So I don't mind that. He just missed out on my list. He would have been my number 6. And honestly, knowing that Everett's on bye, he'd probably be my number 5 going forward. But yeah, I think he's a decent option. I'm a little concerned because I did see a lot of people say like, this isn't going to be like a really severe injury for Javonte Williams. If he was going to be out for a number of weeks, like 4 or 5 weeks or something, he would probably be my like number 2 potentially this week. But he might not even miss one game out of this based on
That's the
things that
concern
I
right
saw.
now.
So if he doesn't miss any games, like I think people are just going to chase the big performance and blow some fab on him. I would be willing to only spend like 0 to 5% on this dude.
Agreed.
My number 4 is a guy that probably is, on your waiver wire because a lot of people dropped him and not because, he's a guy that was like a big performer this week. I have Zay Jones as my number 4 because he's available in 38% of leagues right now. Or sorry, he's only rostered in 38% of leagues right now. He hasn't played the last 2 games, but he did have 7 targets in week 1 and scored a nice touchdown. He had 6 targets in week 2, dropped a donut, but he missed half the game because he ended up getting injured in that game. Sounds like he should be back this week. And if you guys are in a position where, like us, you play in like 2 wide receiver, 2 flex, 3 wide receiver, 2 flex leagues where wide receivers come at a heavy premium, then Zay Jones is a guy that I think could be like a borderline flex play on any given week that you could kind of just throw into your lineup. I think that the Jags will start to figure their shit out eventually. And once that happens, then Zay Jones can be a guy that you throw into your flex. So I again, another guy that I'm not spending any fab on, probably 0 to 5% at most. But I do think if you're in need of wide receiver depth, maybe you lost Mike Williams, or maybe you need to fill in for T. Higgins for the next couple of weeks, and he was like one of your flex options. I think that that Zay Jones is a half decent option to throw on the end of your bench if you need some depth.
Yeah, no, I don't mind that call. For what it's worth, obviously we saw the Jaguars offense not fully get back on track, but step in the right direction against the Falcons. And once Zay Jones comes back, he's going to figure into the starting outside wide receiver role, probably be up there in terms of the top 2 in terms of snaps on this team. So I don't mind that call.
Yeah, and I think the Jags schedule actually might even out a little bit coming up as well. So they play the Bills this week in London again. So they're in London for a second straight week, which is pretty wild. But then they have the Colts after that, the Saints, the Steelers, the 49ers. So a couple offenses that they're going to need to try and keep up with, and then a couple more, defenses that are going to be somewhat susceptible to the passing game too. So don't mind that for Zay Jones. Who do you got at number 4?
Yeah, so my number 4 right now that I have in my waiver wire is actually going to be Michael Wilson of the Arizona Cardinals. Did only run the third most routes on the team, which is something that you could probably point to. Only 35 routes compared to 40 and 46 of Marquise and Rondale more specifically. But he represents a skill set that they don't currently have in that receiving core. And that is a big-bodied wide receiver that can win the ball at the high point. And we saw that on display in this game against the 49ers. 49ers, tough defense. He goes out there, 7 targets, has 2 touchdowns, looks very good, looks very efficient. And honest to God, when a rookie receiver shows this level of upside, I just want to be betting on them realistically. Like, yeah, it's not like he's running, the most routes on the team, but he's still running 35 routes. He's still getting a good chunk of the routes. And like I said, he has a skill set, especially once they get down to the red zone, of having that size that Marquise Brown and Rondale Moore can't say that they have. So he's a top 5 pickup for me. I like Michael Wilson. I think he's a solid player, underrated player, honestly, in the draft cycle. I know a lot of film guys really like this guy. Showed out in the Senior Bowl. Like to see him, the fact that he's producing so early in the season.
Yeah, for people who don't know what he was like as a prospect, he was like literally so injured his entire collegiate career that he just like put nothing on paper basically. But when you watch the film, you saw that this guy actually had a little bit of wiggle to his game. He was strong. He was physical. He kind of was like a Cedric Tillman and him were both like the 2 physical guys of the draft cycle. Tillman obviously was drafted by the Browns, hasn't really gotten a lot of playing time because Cooper, Elijah Moore, and DPJ are ahead of him on the depth chart. But I do like that Wilson is getting on the field, and I actually have him a lot higher than you. I have him at number 2 this week. The reason being is because he also, one thing that I noticed is that he is ranked second among rookie wide receivers in yards per route run this year. He's 2.3 yards per route run. Only Puka Nacua has been better from a yards per route run standpoint. So I actually like Michael Wilson to potentially, he's probably not going to be a guy that you want to like throw into your lineup, but as a stash, kind of see what happens with him. I don't mind him going forward for the Arizona Cardinals. Josh Dobbs, of course, has been pretty solid. We got a report that Kyler Murray's probably not going to be back for another couple of weeks, but I like Michael Wilson. Again, this is not a good waiver week, so I would only probably spend 5 to 10% at most, even though he's my second highest pickup. But he's a decent stash in my opinion.
And for reference, the 2 guys I have directly in front of them are more so handcuff running backs, like you guys will see like really soon. But like if you want to argue them up to 2, again, I wouldn't bet that. For me personally, there's a clear-cut number 1, which we'll see in a second, but we'll get into it.
Yeah, so my number 3 is probably one of the guys that you have ahead of Michael Wilson. I have Chuba Hubbard at number 3 right now, who's rostered in 18% of leagues. So he is widely available for the most part. Sanders was already banged up coming into this game. As I mentioned earlier, Sanders is the number 56 running back in terms of PFF grade among 60 qualified guys. Like the guys that are below Miles Sanders right now are like Dalvin Cook. Like we're talking like bad running backs at this point in time. So Miles Sanders, even though this was like his first game that he was banged up for, he hasn't been good previous to that. So I know he got the big contract and I know he's the guy that's supposed to be like the workhorse there, but I wouldn't be shocked if Chuba Hubbard, who by the way is the 9th highest graded running back according to PFF right now among 60 qualified running backs, starts to eat more and more into his workload. And of course, he's still Miles Sanders. He could still get injured. Even though he played 17 games last year with the Eagles, he was previous to that, he was a guy that could never stay on the field for more than like 12 games a year. So I wouldn't be shocked if we get 3 or 4 good, usage games out of Chuba Hubbard where he's like the lead back there in Carolina. It's not a good offense. It's not a situation that I want to be investing into. But if you're holding a backup tight end or if you're holding, another defense or whatever, if you're holding a handcuff that isn't very good, at least we know Chuba's a good player. And if he gets the opportunity, he'll probably be an RB2.
Yeah, 100%. He is my number 3 guy. Actually, sorry, he's my number 2. So I'll just get into him. He's my number 2. I'll get into my number 3 right afterwards. But we did see, I understand Miles Sanders was banged up, didn't play much in the second half, but we did see Chuba Hubbard be treated like the starting running back for the over the course of the game. 43% of the routes, 46% of the carries, 52% of the snaps. He looks like the more efficient player, like you said. I wouldn't be shocked if he is getting more work moving forward. And I do think that he could potentially be the main running back for this team. Like I think right now he is a more talented player and he could play on all 3 downs, something that Miles Sanders realistically hasn't shown the ability to do since his rookie season in Philadelphia. So I love Chuba Hubbard. Obviously we got a little bit of bias being Canadian boys cheering on, rooting on the Canadian guy, but I do think he is deserving of a top 5 placement on this list.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, like you mentioned it, he got actually most of the plays there. The Miles Sanders ended up getting like the 2-minute drill work and the long down and distance and like the
Goal line.
goal line work there. But I mean, it's a step in the right direction. Again, we're talking about a barren waiver wire this week. There's not
Yeah.
really any good pickups unless for some reason, like, Roshan Johnson's available on your waiver wire. Maybe he gets dropped after this week, given the Khalil Herbert usage that we saw. Definitely keep an eye out for that on Wednesday when people are making their. I'm willing to bet Wednesday will end up being the better waiver day this week than going like what we have on Tuesday here. Like I bet like people are going to drop better options than are currently on your waiver wire this week. So
Yeah,
definitely
I'd
keep
agree
that
with
in
that.
mind. I'll let you get into your number 3. I'm pretty sure we have the same number 1, but I'll let you get into your number 3.
So my number 3 is going to be Tajay Spears of the Tennessee Titans. He looked very efficient. Nine overall opportunities in this game. Turned that into 58 yards from scrimmage. Honestly, this is just a bet on efficiency. Young legs on that offense. Obviously, we've been talking about being, the Derrick Henry haters for the last couple of years, but this is the year it honestly looks like he's not the same running back. Like, and I understand he still had a really, really good game from a fantasy standpoint. I believe he had that big touchdown run as well, 5.5 yards per carry. But for the season as a whole, he's averaging 3.9 yards per carry. He only has 8 targets in the 4 games. I know that's not part of his game, but last year we saw him command 41 targets in the 16 games he played. He just does not look like the same Derrick Henry we've been seeing. And validly so. This is a 250-pound, 29-year-old running back with the amount of touches he has under his belt. He was going to break down sooner rather than later. So with Tajay Spears, I like betting on rookie running backs that showed this level of efficiency behind veteran running backs that can go down literally tomorrow. That's my philosophy. If anything were to happen to Derrick Henry, Tajay Spears has the archetype to be a league winner in fantasy.
Yeah, it's tough with Derrick Henry. I'm not ready to say that like he's washed or that he's completely done because he looked quite
He's showing
good.
the signs.
89.8 PFF offensive grade this past week.
For sure.
But he, like you said, he's kind of been up and down. He had 61.9 in week 3, 64.7 in week 2, 70.5 in week 1. So I mean, he hasn't really been that great. Like he looked like old school Derrick Henry this past week, but we don't know if that's going to last the entire season. So Tajay Spears, I think he was my number 4, my number 5 ad last week. I just didn't want to rehash the same discussion again.
Sure.
He is getting a lot of the work and they were like leading that game, obviously, too. Because the thing I said about Tajay Spears last week was, when the Titans are losing, he's the guy that's in the game more often. But when the Titans are winning, which they were, obviously, Derrick Henry time. So you're seeing, the snap share is being a lot more volatile than it used to be in Derrick Henry's career. Like, yeah, there'd be one game where they would get boat raced and Derrick Henry would be phased out. But for the most part, even whether they were winning, losing, close game, whatever, it was mostly Derrick Henry on the field. And we're not really like the second they get down, it's like Tajay Spears time pretty much. So that's definitely something to keep in mind with Spears. Probably not a guy you can play unless Henry goes down, but
Agreed.
A guy that is definitely worth a stash nonetheless. And I've been stashing him in my home league since week 1 because I'm, if I have to bet on a guy that probably goes down with an injury, it's going to be the oldest starting running back probably in the league. So
yeah,
my number 1, I'm sure you're number 1. I'm not 100% convinced this guy's any good, but if he is, he's going to be one of the best waiver pickups of the entire year because if Jameson Williams, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions, is available on your waiver wire right now, his suspension has been since reduced from 6 games to 4 games. So that came out, I believe it was on Friday night. They announced that. He is now eligible to play in week 5. So he was originally going to be on suspension reserve or whatever they want to call it until week 7 after week 6. But now he is eligible to come back this week. He is available right now in 70% of leagues. We have virtually no information to go off to tell us this guy's good or bad, regardless of his rookie season. Like he didn't really do anything. He was coming off of an ACL tear his rookie year. What we do know is that his final year at Alabama, he was one of the most electric receivers in college football. He was a 12th overall pick in the draft. He's a guy that was, a full downfield kind of dude. The problem that I have with Jameson Williams a little bit is that I don't know if he's going to like work into a full route participation right away. It might take a couple weeks. Josh Reynolds has been pretty good. They've been using all these other receivers there in Detroit, but come week 6, come week 7, if this guy is running 80-90% of the routes, in theory, he's the dimension that this offense has been missing, right? Like Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to do his thing. Sam Laporta can stretch the seam from the tight end position or play, close to the line of scrimmage. Of course, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to work out of the backfield. David Montgomery is a solid between the tackles grinder. What they don't have right now, what Josh Reynolds has been kind of doing a good job of so far this season, is a guy that can get deep and get down the field. And if Jameson Williams was worth the 12th overall pick they spent on him, that would be his role in this offense.
The corpse of Marvin Jones right now played 56% of the snaps, 52% of the snaps, 41% of the snaps, and 28% of the snaps each and every one of the last weeks. So clear trend there is that his snaps are going down. But the fact is that he's still got snaps in this offense, and he has been probably the most inefficient receiver in the league. Has not gotten a catch since week 1, has 2 catches for 8 yards on his 7 targets this year. Jameson Williams doesn't have to be a superstar talent right off the bat. The fact that he can just go onto the field, doesn't have to do much to already beat out Marvin Jones for his overall percentage of the routes right now, and has the opportunity to work ahead of Josh Reynolds if he can show that same level of talent he did in college. Like, he's going to be a no-brainer pickup. This offense is too good. Ben Johnson is too good at scheming his guys open, that Jameson Williams, at least on 2 or 3 occasions a game, is going to get passes down the field, is probably going to hook up on 1 or 2, 25, 30-yard bombs. And if he can craft out the rest of his game, can be a consistent, maybe not an 8, 9, 10 target guy, because obviously Laporta and Amon-Ra are the clear-cut number 1s and 2 in the passing game right now. But 6 targets for this guy, 7 targets for this guy can probably get you to 65, 70 receiving yards, maybe more if he catches a bomb. On top of that, Jared Goff's probably going to throw 25, 30 plus touchdowns this year. It's just a process play. So I do think he has to be the one. The other guy I really considered putting on this list, by the way, the reason why I didn't is because he is at a onesie, but I'm extremely impressed with CJ Stroud, and I wanted to get him onto this top 5 because I think he deserves to be onto this top 5. I just think right now, given that running backs and wide receivers are the needle movers, I think you have to prefer them from a baseline standpoint. But if you're in a pinch at quarterback and you need one, like CJ Stroud is going to be my clear-cut number 6.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so funny because I saw these 2 comments. So Tony says, is J-Mo going to be the wide receiver 1 in Detroit in 1 to 2 years? So I don't think we should be expecting that anymore because Amon-Ra is clearly a stud. What we can expect, like you kind of just mentioned, is like a better Gabe Davis. Like, if he can be a better Gabe Davis, he's going to be in a great offense. He's going to have opportunities to catch these long bomb touchdowns, maybe some design plays. But then we also have Matt in here saying Jameson Williams is Kadarius Toney. Like, I do think that's the wide range of outcomes we're talking about with Jameson Williams. Like, everything he's shown me so far is that he might not be the hardest worker. He might be a bit of a knucklehead right now, betting on college football games. Like, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm a little nervous about the player just not being very good, which is why I sold off every dynasty share of Jameson Williams I had. But I will say, the path is there. Like, if he is a good player, all he has to be is Gabe Davis for the Detroit Lions, and he's legit going to be a wide receiver 3 that you can throw into your flex option.
It's so funny right now. So for reference, Gabe Davis has 18 targets in 4 games right now, and he's the wide receiver 28 in terms of PPR. Like, could you fathom that? He's averaging less than 5 targets per game, but because he plays in that situation and because he has that role with that quarterback, he's a top 30 fantasy football wide receiver. Like, top 30 fantasy football wide receiver, people might think, oh, well, he's not a wide receiver 2. Like, who cares? Top 30 wide receiver in fantasy football is a wide receiver 3. It's your first flex. Like, he's not consistent, and you're probably not going to enjoy the ride getting there sometimes, but it's production.
I've enjoyed the ride. I have the Gabe Davis, Josh Allen stack in our listener league, and it's been very fun. Rushman says, source, trust me, bro, is all I heard when I read this. He said, I hear from inside sources that Jameson Williams is not getting the NFL and is behind the system. I 100% believe that. Like, I think that's probably true. But at the same time, if this guy starts to realize, oh, maybe I'm not going to have an NFL career if I don't start working harder or whatever the case is, and he does figure things out, he could legit be a very productive NFL wide receiver. So I'm not worried about Jameson Williams at all when it comes to like Amon-Ra St. Brown or Sam Laporta. If he's like a cherry on top, like the Lions offense is already good without Jameson Williams, but if he can be the role player that they need him to be, just stretch the field, maybe provide us some like end arounds and like big plays here and there, then this offense could be really, really good and could be one of the best in the league, knowing what they already have with Amon-Ra, with Laporta, with Gibbs, and with Montgomery out of the backfield. So we are going to, do you have anything else on the waivers, or we want to get into some of the supers and some of the comments we have here?
We'll get into some of the supers. I just quickly want to point this because I saw it and it's like, pertinent to the Lions. I love ARSB right now. Mighty Boots, don't get me wrong. Like, he's a top 5 dynasty wide receiver for me, but the fact that he's the wide receiver 3 on Keep Trade Cut right now is more so showing just how impatient people are. Like, people see CeeDee Lamb have a bad week last week, 4 catches, 36 yards this week. Like, he is the wide receiver 3 in Dynasty. I don't think we should be overthinking that.
Yeah, and maybe this is a trend with the Lions because now we have 2 straight draft classes where they were like hyper celebrating their first round pick, and it hasn't really worked out so far with Jahmyr Gibbs. But Jameson Williams, dude, if you saw the Inside the War Room camera when the Saints took Chris Olave and they celebrated like nobody's business, I mean, they probably shouldn't have been because Chris Olave is clearly a better receiver than Jameson Williams. They were really excited to get JMO, and that at least tells me that they want to use the guy. And hopefully, if he's healthy and if he's good to go and he's right mentally, he can actually provide something to this offense.
How Lions would it be is they celebrated the Jahmyr Gibbs pick and they're handing big tone setter David Montgomery 25 touches a game, or they celebrated Jameson Williams and then they just give Josh Reynolds like 85% of the routes.
It's pretty crazy. Did we have any who went 11th overall in the draft? Is he a star yet? Because the pick before the Lions seems to be one that and not that I'm saying Jahmyr Gibbs isn't a good player. He's obviously a good player, but the pick I would say hasn't gone according to plan, at least from a fantasy perspective. We want to see Jahmyr Gibbs more involved.
Who did go a pick before Gibbs? I'm trying to think.
Was it Skoronski or did he go before that?
Skoronski.
Yeah, it was Skoronski. Okay. I mean, the Titans offensive line doesn't look very good, so I don't know if
Skoronski's been banged up.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyways, we'll get through some of the super chats, but of course, we will be live later today to get through like all of the comments. So if you guys have questions for us, save them for Monday night live stream before we go live for tonight's game for the Seahawks and Giants. Half PPR, 12 team, Javonte and Pittman for Jalen Waddle. Which side do you want?
I'm just going to take Waddle, to be honest, I think. If this is a shallower league.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty even trade. I would say you're getting a good upside running back, a solidly productive wide receiver who's been better than Waddle so far this year.
Yeah.
But I think I just want Jalen Waddle there. Jalen Waddle, I mean, he's still going to be one of the biggest buy lows in all of fantasy right now. Like, you have to go out and trade for this guy. Like, for some reason, we just have not seen Jalen Waddle do Jalen Waddle things yet. But I'm very confident that it's going to correct itself. Tyreek Hill cannot do everything. Devon Achane cannot do everything every single week. Eventually, we're going to get a Jalen Waddle explosion.
Dolphins, though, just looks too good.
Yeah.
I want him. My team had 30 points total until CMC, Ayuk, and Cowboys defense popped off with 27. What a save. Yeah, those guys, I mean, 60,
CMC 45 points definitely feels good if you guys are not playing against CMC. I survived against CMC in our listener league. I played against him, and somehow I'm still going to win.
Which league?
Listener league. The regular redraft league.
Oh, right, dude. Brock had him.
Yeah, so the reason I survived against CMC was because I had Josh Allen, who in a 6-point per passing touchdown league dropped 48 points. And I also had Gabe Davis, who had a touchdown. Cortland Sutton had a touchdown. DJ Moore had 131 and a touchdown. And then DeAndre Swift had a touchdown. He had 18 points. Bijan Robinson had 20 points in our with points per carry and that kind of stuff that we have. So I survived a 51.45 performance from Christian McCaffrey, which was pretty insane.
My team across the board this week in that league is just hilarious. I got 29.05 with our scoring from Isiah Pacheco, 26.5 from Jefferson. Dude, I put up 193 with Hill and Aaron Jones combining for less than 13 points.
Yeah. Can I just point out, if anybody in our listener league is listening to this right now, will somebody please take Anthony Richardson off my team? Like, he's on my bench rotting because I have Josh Allen and nobody wants to give me anything for this guy. And he's like a literal lock for like 20 points per game at the quarterback spot.
Brother, look at my bench. Do you think I really have anything that I would be willing to offer you?
Like, I'm surprised nobody wants Richardson is my point. Like, nobody wants this guy. I could give you the Richardson Pittman stack as well. You want Richardson and Pittman? I'll give it to you. Just give me like Jalen Waddle. Give me like a slightly better receiver than Pittman.
Richardson and Pittman for your boy Godwin and Tua. Take it or leave it.
Absolutely not.
Actually, I have the Hill.
I don't want another quarterback back. I have Josh Allen. I'm never going to sit his ass.
Nah, you got to start Tua.
I know, literally. Dude, quarterbacks never get traded, but dude, Richardson's like an every week starter. And there's people in our league that are starting like mid quarterbacks like Joe Burrow right now and fucking Fields.
The fact that we've come this far, we're like, yeah,
Joe Burrow's officially a mid quarterback. You heard it here first.
He
no,
is.
he's actually a great quarterback. He'll figure his shit out. But
anyways, real quick, he mentioned that the Cowboys D went off, so I do have to talk about my lock of the week. Not only hitting, but never being in jeopardy. Like, the Cowboys they look like the Cowboys. Okay, the Cowboys 3 out of 4 weeks look like the team that you would think that they would. And then you just got that random Cardinals week where, like, I have no clue what the fuck happened because every other game they've looked arguably the best team in the NFL. And then that game against the Cardinals, it's like, what's going on? Sorry, Flat, but Cowboys -6. They could have made it -34 and it would have hit.
Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy to see out of those guys. Also, hilarious that my lock of the week was the Bengals -2.5, and I went 11-4 on the week, and I picked that as my lock of the week.
Dude, you had Bengals 2.5. Well, I mean, like theoretically it could have hit if the Titans scored 0.5 points. So
Absolutely ridiculous. Anyways, we will be live later tonight. Like I said, for what it's worth, I tweeted this out today. 41-21 on my against the spread and over under challenge that I'm doing this year. Every game of the NFL season so far, I've bet on like $10, like just a little bit of money on over under or spread, whatever one I like more. And yes, love that. And then 41-21 is my record so far this season. And
that's
the
good.
one that I like tonight, in case you guys are looking for some betting advice, is I like the Seahawks -1.5 tonight against the Giants. It's on the road, so it's a little sketchy. The
I
Giants
like
play
the
pretty
over
well at
too.
home. What's
I like
up?
the over. I like the over.
Yeah,
too.
the over under is also pretty enticing as well. I think it's 47 right now, and I think
47.5. I think you got the hook.
yeah, 47.5 I think is what you're getting on FanDuel specifically, but 77% of the cash is on the over right now. So a lot of the sharps are taking the over. Sharps are barely taking the Seahawks against the spread, but I actually kind of like it. So
Yeah, no, I feel you. Like that. That's how I would play it. I actually, oddly enough, for those of you that didn't know, after the Cowboys game, I was in Toronto because I watched Nas and Wu-Tang perform. They had a performance in Toronto. I went with my brother. And by the way, phenomenal performance. Nas did a double set. Method Man did his own solo set. Like it was awesome, right? But one of my buddies, when I'm on the train ride, I'm on the GO train back to Hamilton at like 2 a.m. He's like, "Yo, like, what's your play for tomorrow? Like, what should I bet?" Like, I'm thinking Seahawks -1.5, and I'm like, I like the Seahawks 1.5, but honestly, if I had to make like one bet of this game personally, like I like the over. Like that's
yeah,
my favorite bet for the game.
maybe I'll do a little Seahawks -1.5 and the over parlayed together.
I like
It's like
that.
usually when you do that, you can get like a +300 bet out of it. So I don't mind that as well. Anyways, yeah, appreciate you guys for joining us. Definitely, Danny will refine the waiver wire list and come at you guys tomorrow with that. Tomorrow, I will be breaking down a Dynasty related video. Either let me know what you guys want to see. Do you want to see me update the cornerstone rankings, or do you want to see me talk about the 2024 class? I can do either one. Definitely, we'll be doing one of those two. So definitely leave that in the comments down below after this stream is over. I'll have timestamps in the stream if you guys joined us late and you want to go back. I will do that like right now as soon as the stream is over. But again, if you guys enjoyed the stream at any point, please hammer the like button, hammer it, hit it as hard as you can, hit it multiple times, but make sure it's actually like black or whatever filled in when you actually do it. And then subscribe if you guys are new around here. Rushman said he was new around here. Definitely appreciate the subscription.
Appreciate that.
But yeah, with that being said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.